let's get painting. Today we are going to be making a Christmas tree on an 8x10 canvas. You can use a larger canvas if you would like. I'm just going to use an 8x10 because it fits really nicely on my table, and my brushes I think will work better with that. So I'm going to start by getting some yellow paint and putting that on my palette. And what I'm going to do is make a nice big fat stripe down the middle of my canvas with my biggest brush, which is going to be a 3/4 inch brush for this painting. I need something to clean my brush on. I'm going to be really fancy and use some toilet paper to clean my brush. I like using toilet paper because it's easy to tear up into little pieces if I need to dab something up, and it's not very expensive, so I can make it go a long way for how much I'm spending. So I'm going to start by getting some, I got a little bit of dust on my canvas, going to wipe that off first. Get some water on my brush and then some paint. I'm just going to go right down the middle and do a stripe from top to bottom, just some pure yellow. Add a little more water to my brush so it spreads a little bit better. And I have a canvas that wraps around the edges, so I am going to paint the edges of my canvas with that yellow stripe down the middle too. Because I want my picture to wrap around. Now if you are using a canvas that has staples on the sides, you don't have to paint them. If you're using a canvas board, that's fine too. You don't need to paint the edges of your really thin little canvas board. Those are nice for saving money and space. I like to work on stretched canvas, so that's what I'm using today. Make my stripe a little fatter. Not forget to get the top of my canvas too, being careful not to put my canvas on the table so that I don't end up getting a bunch of paint on my table. You might want to put some paper down. I clean this table off all the time with paint, so I'm totally fine with getting paint on my craft table. That's about as thick as I'm going to make the stripe, so we'll do that for the top. Let's get a little more water, make sure that it's lining up with what's on the front of my canvas, and just keep painting in that stripe. I'm going to make my stripe about a third the thickness of my canvas, so if I'm not measuring but just eyeballing, that it'd be about the same white on this side as yellow as white. There we go. Add a little more to the bottom of the canvas so the painting goes around the edges. And there's my yellow. Now I'm going to start adding a little bit of orange to my yellow. So it's getting a little darker near the edge. So I'll get a little orangey yellow mixed up. A little bit more yellow in that. Right on the edge of that stripe, just making it orange, blend into the yellow right there. I'll get a little more water so that'll blend a little better. Just about 1 part orange to 1 part yellow, so about 50-50. I'm going to paint a little bit over that stripe so it blends really nicely. Remembering to go over the edge of my canvas. A little bit more. Just a little more water on my brush. That 50-50 orange and yellow mixture. Paint a little over my yellow stripe. orange right there on the edge of my canvas. Oh, don't forget to do the top of my canvas. Almost forgot that. That would look a little silly for anyone who's taller than me and might see the top of my canvas when I hang it on my wall. And that way I won't need to frame my picture. Okay, now that I've got that yellow orange, I'm going to go just a little bit of plain orange without any yellow in it next to that. Top of my canvas too. There we go. My stripe on the other side. A little more water on my brush so that that paint goes on nice and smooth. Bottom of my painting and the top of my painting. Oh, I think I might have just bumped my camera. I'm just going to check and make sure I got that centered still. Yep, we're good. Okay. And now I'm going to get a little bit of red. Shake that up to make sure it hasn't separated. A little red on my palette. Then I'm going to mix orange and red just like I did with that yellow and orange, about 50-50 red and orange. I start on this side this time. Put my orangey red right next to that orange. You might be thinking it looks a little bit more like fall colors right now, but just wait a little bit and we'll get the Christmassy look soon. A little bit more of that 50-50 color so I can get the... Here, I'll get a little bit off of my brush by doing some here, and then I'll get the top of my canvas. I don't want to go on with too much paint or it'll just drip right onto my table. There we go. Mix a little bit more of that. Get this side. Oh, a little more water on my brush. Got a little too dry. Put that paint back on. Okay. Making sure I paint over the orange a little bit so that it blends. Bottom of my canvas. And the top of my canvas. Alright, and now the last stripe is just going to be pure red. So it'll be like a bright cherry red on the edges. It's getting a little pink at the top because my canvas is showing through. I'm going to put a little bit more paint there. A little bit more. Before I get too distracted, I'm going to remember to do the top of my canvas while I have a little corner here that I can still hold without getting my thumb in the paint. But it's totally okay if you get your hands a little messy. That's part of painting. It's getting some paint on your hands. There we go. Let's blend in. And I'll go ahead and lean that side on there while it's still just plain white canvas, and then I'll paint this side. Then I don't need to worry about getting any paint on my table. I'll have to be a little more careful with the other side. A little more water. Alright, now I gotta carefully put my fingers under my canvas to balance it, to keep them clean. I'll get the bottom of my canvas while it's tilted up too. Carefully put that down so I don't smudge the edge. And finish painting in that corner. There we go. Now it's time. Oh, a little bit of a pink spot there I want to cover up. Okay. Now it's time to get this side right here. Pure red. Right on there. Remember to overlap your orange a little bit. It's getting really pink on this side for me. To do a few layers of red. Okay. I'm gonna carefully get that picked up. Get the top of my canvas. Careful not to lean the canvas on the table because I don't want to get that side that I just finished painting to rub off onto the table and ruin that nice work I did over there. If it does end up smudging though, I can always go back in after it's dried a little bit and put a little red on top, so you can fix little mistakes like that pretty easily. Get that painted in, a little more water. Alright, this is going to probably be the trickiest corner. Okay, my yellow is dry there, so I can put my thumb there. There we go. That is the background for my Christmas tree. And that yellow behind the middle part is hopefully going to make my Christmas tree look like it's glowing a little bit. I also want to put a star on top, and I want that to look like it's glowing a little more than the rest of the tree. So I'm going to get some white. I'm going to keep using my 3/4 inch brush. Make sure it's nice and clean so I don't just turn this pink. Oh, it's shaking my table a little bit. Let's lift that up. Dry off my brush, get some pure white, and then I'm going to, close to the top of my canvas, make a little circle. And take a little bit of the paint off my brush and then just pull some white paint out from that circle to make it look like it's glowing. And that's going to pull a lot of paint from the middle of my circle, so I am going to have to refill the center of my circle after I'm done with that. And there we go. That is where my star is going to be. Go ahead and clean my brush. Then I'm going to get, let's do something a little smaller than my 1/2 inch brush, maybe a round brush. I'm going to use a number 9 round brush, which is about a little under 1/4 inch thick. And I am going to put a green line down the center of my canvas, going from top to bottom. Oh, I know I'm going to need more green than that for this Christmas tree, so let's just get some more now. Get my brush wet, dry it off a little bit, and roll my brush to the side of the paint to get a nice fine tip. And I'm going to do my top of my tree starting about here. Just do a light green line. That's going to be a guideline for me. That's going to be the center where my tree is going to be. Alright, I'll just clean that brush off. Put it to the side for right now, and I'm going to start at the bottom and make the trunk of my tree with a little bit of brown. There we go. Go ahead and take my 3/4 inch brush again. Oh, it's a little too wet. I'm going to dry that off. Get some pure brown. And I'm going to come up maybe 1.5 inches. Pull that down, and then I'm going to make it almost like a little triangle because tree trunks are thicker towards the bottom than they are at the top. I go just a little bit higher. A little more paint and make that edge a little crisper. And I'm going to paint that on the bottom of my canvas too, so it wraps around. Just like that. There we go. And I'm going to clean off my 3/4 inch brush. Dry it off a little bit. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of white and just a little bit of brown. I'm going to make the center of my tree trunk a little lighter. Doing a few little white stripes. Carry that on to the bottom. Then I'm going to come into my brown, go over that a little bit, especially towards the edges of those white stripes, so it's not so obvious where the highlight is starting. So it fades in a little bit, I guess you could say. Clean out my brush. And I'm going to get a little bit of black. Shake it up. Just a tiny bit. I don't think I'm going to need a lot of black for this painting right now. Probably will need some more later when I get into the tree branches though. I'm just going to do a little bit of black right along the very edge. Feels like my edges are pretty dry now, so I can just lift that up without having to worry about smearing paint. And then I'm going to not worry about using water, just clean off my brush on my toilet paper a little bit, and then go straight into the brown. Pick up some of that black on the canvas and pull it in. I'm doing some more stripes in. And I'll just make the tree trunk look a little darker at the edges, so it looks a little bit more 3D. Remembering if I have a canvas that wraps around to do this on the bottom too. Unless you're planning on framing this, then you don't need to worry about the edges. Clean off my brush. Again, I was just using a number 9 brush, about 1/4 inch thick. And now I am going to start putting in my tree branches, starting from the bottom and going up to the top, because I want the bottom ones to be overlapped by the ones on the top. Let's see, I think my 1/2 inch brush is probably going to be a little too thick for that. I'm going to get my 3/4 inch brush is too thick. I'm going to get my 1/2 inch brush now. Get a little wet. And I'm going to get some pure green. I'm going to come out about 1 inch away from the edge, and I'm going to loop. Make a little swirl like this. Get some more paint. I want it to almost touch this edge. Or maybe even, yeah, let's just touch this edge, this corner of the tree trunk, and pull this down over it. Make a nice swirl. Almost a crescent moon shape. And you'll notice my brown is showing through my paint a little bit. That's just fine. We're going to be taking care of that later. Pull this up just a little past the edge of my trunk. Make it a little darker on top of that red so the red doesn't show through so much. And then I'm going to clean off my brush. Get a little bit of the black, mix it about 50-50, maybe just a little bit more green than 50-50. Make sure that that's blended really nicely. There we go, that's a good color for this. And I'm going to put that at the bottom of my tree branch that I just made out of that swirl. And that's going to make the trunk color hide that was poking through before. Just a little bit at the bottom of that swirl. Okay, then I'm going to clean out my brush again. I'm going to get a little bit of yellow, just some pure yellow, and put it at the top. Got a little too much water on my brush, dry that off. More yellow. That green's very strong and it's gonna blend with the yellow right when you put it on. Alright, and there's my first tree branch. Clean off my brush. Get ready to make my next one. This one's gonna be starting with pure green, of course. And we're gonna start about, oh, there, I wanna take my branch out a little bit. I'm going to get a little yellow in my brush so that it'll match that. And I'm going to make sure that my tree branch gets to my line. The edge of my tree branch gets to my line. And then I'm going to be coming out from that line and making my next swirl. I'm going to have it come just barely not touching the tree trunk for the bottom of my swirl. I have that come up to about here, maybe get a little closer to the edge of the canvas on that side. It's alright if it's not perfectly centered. And I'm going to get this painted right here. I come up a little higher on that guideline than the last branch ended. About, I'd say an inch higher. And that's going to be for my top swirl. Right there. More green here to cover up that red a bit better. A little more paint to make sure that my edge is very crisp right there. What I mean by crisp is that it doesn't show too much of the canvas texture through it, because then it has kind of a bumpy, wavy edge. And then I'm going to get just that little bit of black in my green again and do the bottom of my branch, so that that part of the branch is in shadow. Get my brush a little drier, a little more black, I think. There we go. And I'm going to have this come out a little bit more. Make it go a little past that line, the center guideline, about like that, so that the next branch will for sure overlap it. Let's make it a little bit more obvious where the edge of that branch is. Adding a little more black. Okay, I'm going to clean all that black off my brush and get my yellow again. Just some pure yellow. Put it along the top of my branch. Maybe even go a little past where the branch ended last time. Make my branch a little fatter. There we go. And if you're really worried about getting into these tight little corners, you can use a round brush. I feel pretty comfortable using my flat brush, but it's your own personal choice which brush you want to do to make these shapes. Let's get a little less water on my brush and get some more green paint, and I'm going to do another swirl. Start where this one ended. Right here, I think, a little bit further down, so I'll be able to make the swirl go down here to where it ended, where that corner was that it touched. And then this swirl is going to be just a little shorter than this one, because the tree is going to taper off towards the top. Paint that swirl in right there. Remember to bring it up a little higher on my guideline than the last branch. I'm using a brush to paint my branch, but this is called a branch. All right. Let's paint that in. Past the guideline again. Okay, now I got to get some black on my brush to do the bottom of the branch again. Make sure that it's darker on the bottom than it is on the top. Go. Clean off my brush, dry it off. I'm going to need to get some more toilet paper. That one's really wet. It's going to start tearing apart. And let's dry that off. Okay, and get some pure yellow. Fill in the top of my branch. I'm going to go a little off the original lines. Make that branch a little fatter. They don't all need to be the same thickness, because no tree has branches that are all equally the same thickness. There we go. Let's clean that brush off and get our next branch. Green. I'm going to start, let's go from the middle this time. I'm going to start a little below the branch where this branch ended and to the side of my green guideline for my center. And I'm going to loop it up just a little shorter than this branch. This will be branch number 4. A little more water, but not too much, still dry it off. I don't like to go straight into the paint sometimes because I want to make sure that I didn't pick up any colors from the background. So that's why I'll clean it off with water a lot. Need some more paint. There we go. A little past the center guideline towards the left for this branch. And then I'm going to get a little bit of black, a little bit of green. Oh, too much paint, not enough water. All right, let's try that again. When you do that, sometimes it just barely comes off your brush, which can be fun when you want it to do that, but when you don't want it to do that and you want to get a nice smooth line, you need a little bit more water. You gotta also be careful not to get too much water. It's a delicate balance sometimes. Just play around with it until you get what you want. More on this side. Okay. I think that looks pretty good for that branch's shadow. Now we'll get the highlight with the yellow, the lighter side. A little bit, not too much water this time. See, delicate balance. Sometimes you get too much paint, sometimes you get too much water. And always go back in and try again. If it gets really wet on your canvas, just dab it up with some paper towel, or in my case, the toilet paper. And I know, it's so high class. And just get this highlight in there. There we go. I want to get a crisper line with that yellow, so it's not fading into that orange so much. There we go. That's better. Clean off my brush. Oh, I have a little bit of orange poking through there that I didn't notice before. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of my pure green to cover that up. There we go. That's much better. Get some more pure green, and I'm going to get another branch on this side. Let's start with the tip this time instead of coming in from the center, coming out from the center, and we'll start here and loop in, making sure to touch that corner again. About right there. Let's see. Let's make this one have a steeper angle, point up a little bit more towards that star. Even almost touching that white. Yeah, I like that better. There we go. This about like that. Okay, then I'll get my black, add the shadow to the bottom of this branch, Oh, a little bit too much black maybe. Go in with a little bit of green over to the top of that. Clean that black off my brush first. In with a little bit of green. So if you noticed you got more black than you wanted on any of your branches, we're painting with a brush, but we are painting branches with our brush. If you got too much black on one of your branches, go ahead and go back in with some pure green over the black. And now I'm going to go with my pure yellow and put my highlight in. A little bit too much water. There we are. I think I'm going to put a little bit more yellow on this one because it's getting closer to the star. And that star is supposed to look like it's glowing, so it's going to make these branches next to it a little lighter. Alright, let's clean off the brush and get some of that green. To do another branch on this side. Let's see. Oh, a little too wet. You can totally see all the paint underneath in the background through that. Let's get this one to come right about there. It's going to be a shorter branch because it's nearer the top. There we go. Let's maybe give it a little bit more loopiness. Bring that branch to there. I'm just going to go to the very edge of that one branch that we just did. So right to the edge. I'm not going to go past it like I did on some of the others. I'll get a little bit of black. Because it was a little tiny bit of green. Get the bottom of that branch shaded in. I'm going to need a little more black than that. There we go. Clean off the brush. And some pure yellow again. There's a lot of wet green paint there, so it really hid that yellow, so I'm going to need to add a lot more yellow. Go a little past the edge of my original branch there, make it a little fatter. And with the corner of my brush to get into that tiny little spot there at the tip of the branch. There we go. It's lined up pretty nicely, maybe just a tiny bit more. I'll really make it look like it's glowing. Okay, clean out my brush, one more branch in there. And let's do it right here. There. And right to there. So it touches right at the edge of this branch where this branch touches this branch, right at that corner. Maybe overlaps it a little bit, that's fine. This one's going to be almost like a teardrop with a bite taken out of it. See a little teardrop shape, and there's the little bite out of it. We'll get that filled in nicely. And we'll add the shading and the highlight. That should probably be our last branch on our tree, and then we'll make our star. Let's see. We want to do the shadow. Oh, that's definitely too much water on my brush. A bit more paint. Alright, let's get the shadow in. Just a little bit of shadow because it's so close to that shining star we're going to put in. Don't get too much black paint on, but just a little bit more. There we go. Clean off my brush. Get some more of that pure yellow. That filled in. We definitely want a lot more yellow. I might need to get some more yellow paint out. I'm getting a little more brush strokey than my other branches got. Let's try to even that out with a drier brush. There we go. Pretty happy with that. Clean off that brush. Dry it off, and then looks like we're going to need some more yellow for the star. And I'm going to put a little bit more yellow down here where it hasn't mixed with any green or orange or anything yet. And I'm going to get my number 9 brush again and get some pure yellow on it. And then I'm just going to make a really rough star. I'm not going to worry about making it look perfect or point straight up or anything like that. It's just a fun little star I'm going to paint. It's going to be a little hard to see at the beginning because it's just going to be pure yellow right on white, which is actually probably looking a little more like pale yellow because it even had yellow underneath it. But we're going to make this star pop. I might make some of my triangles coming off my star a little fatter on one side so they don't look perfect. I don't want this to be a perfect star. I want this to be a fun little playful star. And maybe overlap the tree just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to get a little bit of orange. And just go around the outside of my star. All the paint inside my star is still wet. A little more orange on my brush. So we get a little orange outline, and then we're going to blend that into the yellow soon. There we go. And I'm going to get a little bit more yellow on my brush and just overlap into that orange. I'll just make the star show up a bit more. I'm going to need a little more yellow. It's getting a little too orange in there. There. Now I have a glowy yellow star at the top of my swirly Christmas tree, and it is time to decorate this tree. And I'm just going to do some simple white ornaments. You can add some other colors if you want, but I'm just going to put white ones in. And I'm going to start at the bottom of my tree because that part will have dried first and work my way up to the top, because I don't want to go over wet paint or I'll just end up with light green ornaments instead of the white ornaments I'm wanting. So I'm going to put an ornament right here, just a circle. I'm going to make sure that I paint in kind of a swirly motion so it gets some swirly texture on that. There we go. And another one over here on this branch. And on my 8x10 canvas, this is about the size of a dime. If you have a bigger canvas, you might go a little bigger. Make sure I keep that swirly texture I was doing before. check this branch. This branch is dry enough. I'm going to do one closer to the center of the tree on this one. There we go. And then let's test this one. That one should be okay. This one's going to be overlapping over the edge a bit like these two were. It's still a little closer to the center of the tree. I'm going to go over it one more time with that swirly texture. Okay. One more. Let's see. Nothing's coming up, and my paint doesn't feel cool. If your paint feels cool, it's not completely dry yet. So wait a little longer before painting over any paint that feels cool when you touch it. You want it to feel as warm as just a plain blank canvas would, because that means if it's feeling cool, that means the top might be dry, but underneath is not dry, and as soon as you crack the surface of the paint by pushing on it with your brush, it's going to mix with the paint underneath, and you don't want it to do that. Let's see this one. This one's feeling pretty dry. Oh, it's a little cool. That's while we're waiting for that to finish drying, add a little bit of snow. Just some dots. Background like it's snowing on my Christmas tree. Along the background. When the tree's a little drier, I might add some dots on top of the tree too, because it would be snowing in front of the tree too, because if I just leave them in the background, it's just going to look like it's snowing behind my tree. That's not what I'm looking for. It's kind of close, but I'm going to risk it. I'm going to try it. Oh, there, we're dry enough. I just wanted to make sure that there's at least one ornament on every one of my branches. Right there in that one center part, it's dry enough, so I'm going to do there. Maybe it was still a little wet. Got a little bit of light green instead, so I'm going to definitely have to add a lot more white. To work. Alright, now I'm going to add some of those snowflakes, just the white dots in front of my tree too. Oh, I have a water drop that's about to drip on that. Don't want to drip any water on this. That one went a little scawampus. Let's make that one a little fatter. Hide that. And some of your snowflakes will be thick, some will be thin, and that's fine. They're not going to be perfect. Every snowflake is unique, right? So, there we go. We have a fun little Christmas tree that we made tonight, or today. I don't know what time of day you're doing this. And I hope you had fun making it, and Merry Christmas!